My name is Rob Greenwood and welcome to the UKC Gear Guide. Today we're going to be looking at the Boreal Beta and Beta Eco, which are an interesting shoe for someone like me that comes from a more traditional background and still refers to shoes such as this as rock boots. And yet the Beta and the Beta Eco haven't actually been designed with rock in mind. They've been designed with climbing walls such as this and people who are just starting out into the sport to find something that's a little bit more technical maybe than your classic rock boot that you'd have served your VDIF apprenticeship with, and as a result allows you to tackle more maybe technical areas of the wall that you wouldn't have previously. So for someone who's never worn a climbing shoe before, why might the Beta be of interest? The first thing is that it's got this really nice, forgiving, stretchy upper. It's lovely, feels nice against the skin, and is lightweight and breathable. It's also machine washable, so for those of you who haven't got used to wearing stinky climbing shoes for years, you don't actually have to anymore. You can just wash them. It also means they're much more forgiving within their fit. This sort of sweeping stereotype and generalization that you've got to cram your feet into climbing shoes isn't really true anymore, and particularly isn't true or beneficial when you're starting out and you're essentially looking for something that's just nice, comfortable, and ultimately more technical than a trainer. Boreal say that the Beta is ever so slightly downturned, and whilst it certainly isn't by much. And in terms of its symmetry, it's not so radical to be really uncomfortable, but it is a little technical and does give you plenty of power through your toe. The heel as well is designed with largely comfort in mind. It's not so aggressive that it's going to be cutting in on your Achilles. And all in all, the Beta basically is just a really nice, comfortable shoe to wear. It's not necessarily the most technical, but it's technical enough for when you're starting out. The final thing that's worth saying is that just because it has been designed with the indoors in mind doesn't mean you can't use it outside, because you can, obviously. And it still performs well, it's still comfortable, and it still does exactly what you would want as someone starting out in the sport. Now it's worth mentioning that we've got several models here today. We've got the Beta, we've got the men's Beta Eco, which is a slightly higher volume, and we've got the women's Beta Eco, which is a slightly lower volume. And the difference between the Beta and the Beta Eco was actually, there isn't much difference, at least in terms of the fit and the feel and the performance. They're virtually identical in those respects. The difference comes in the materials used. That's to say that the Beta Eco uses a more sustainable set of materials with recycled uppers and also a recycled rubber around all areas, barring that bit at the front where it's actually the performance and the stickiness that you're after. On the note of rubber, the Beta Eco and the Beta both feature Boreal's Quattro compound. Now Boreal do a few differing compounds, ready from their super sticky Zenith through to the Quattro, which isn't as sticky as some, certainly not as sticky as the Zenith. But the reason why the Quattro has been featured isn't necessarily for its stickiness, it's for the fact that it's durable. And durability, when you're starting out, is a really valuable thing. So on the flip side, this may mean it's not as sticky as some, but it will last a lot longer. And this comes on to another cool aspect about these shoes, and that is price. £80 for the Beta itself and £90 for the Beta Eco. These days that represents an absolute bargain for a set of climbing shoes, with very few being available under £100. We've already touched on the fact that there's men's and women's models, or high and low volume versions of the Beta Eco. There's also men's and women's versions of the Beta as well. What I'd always say to people when trying on shoes is not to get too hung up on whether they're men's or women's. It's that high and low volume bit that's really important, because neither of these are particularly wide or narrow shoes. I'd say that actually they tread a fairly fine line through the middle, being a fairly average width. But if you know that your feet are particularly high volume, it's likely that the men's will suit you. If you've got particularly low volume feet, the women's. And as we always say, if you can get to a climbing shop somewhere or a climbing wall near you to try them on, that'll tell you so much more than this video will as to whether they work for you. Both the Beta and the Beta Eco offer a really competitively priced indoor beginner shoe. It's a little more performance oriented than traditional climbing shoes designed towards beginners, partially because people climbing indoors are just climbing so much harder than maybe they would have previously, where they'd go out and serve a VDIF apprenticeship on mountain routes elsewhere in the country. Whilst the Quattro rubber might not be the grippiest, its benefit of being durable is a huge asset for those who are just starting out or looking to just get a lot of life out of their shoe. The fact that there's a men's and women's, a high and a low volume version available means that you'll be able to tailor the fit for you. And also the addition of the Eco is really cool. They're very similar in terms of that fit, feel, performance. But the fact that they use more sustainable materials, have a lower carbon footprint attached to them, might make them more appealing to some user groups.